She captured $9 billion from the businessmen of Silicon Valley and was dubbed the youngest self-made billionaire in history. She appeared on the covers of the most prestigious magazines, and they called her the next Steve Jobs. Get to know Elizabeth Holmes, the world's youngest fraudster.
Every person should have the ability to get that type of test, because if you understand that early that you're at risk, there's a lot more that you can do about it. And we'd like to see a world in which every person gets access to this type of basic testing. I believe the individual is the answer in changing outcomes. Unless individuals have access to the information.
In 2003, Holmes quit her chemical engineering program at Stanford University to set up her own company in Ross, Silicon Valley. She came up with a crazy invention for a machine that would completely replace the need for doctors. Holmes asserted that the device she envisioned would diagnose an ailment and provide treatment by only drawing a drop of blood. The idea seemed like some sort of fiction. However, our story's heroine managed to convince the biggest businessman of her idea when she was only 19 years old. To understand how she did it, here are the 6 fraud rules. The first rule: get inspired by Silicon Valley. Most of us look at someone who dropped out of college as a loser. But this is not the case in Silicon Valley, where most of those who dropped out of college became technology giants, such as Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates. For people like these, Holmes' case was perfect. The second rule: say that you are the next Steve Jobs. Elizabeth was imitating Jobs in an exaggerated way. She dressed like him, took the same position as him when taking pictures, and even her weekly meetings with the work team were on the same day as Jobs' meetings with his team, and she did not take any vacations during her work, just as Jobs did. It also used the same marketing team that Apple employed at its revolutionary launch, led by Avi Tevanian. The third rule: fill the world with motivation quotes. When you see Holmes in TED lectures, you will always find her talking about that intense passion for what she does, as if she is capable of performing miracles. You will find sentences such as "you can," or "do not let anyone tell you what you want." Even after news of her company's first scandal appeared in the Wall Street Journal, she replied, "This is what happens when you work to change things. And first they think you are crazy, then they fight you, and all of a sudden you change the world." The fourth rule: look like a fraudster. A fraudster is the most elegant person in the room. From the very first moment, Holmes worked to show herself to be in a high position, both intellectually and financially. She appeared on the covers of the most prestigious magazines, such as Forbes and Fortune. She also appeared on TDX, morning and evening programs. She was everywhere, and whenever you watch her, you will find her talking about achievement, work, and success. The fifth rule: provide a simple, logical, and skillful investment model. Holmes has been keen for 15 years to present her project in a simple and seductive way. So she skipped the accurate scientific basics of her device and moved directly to the potential that salivated investors. A simple blood test process and a device the size of a home computer will encourage more people to take the tests, and therefore you do not need a laboratory for analyses, and there is no need for a doctor. You'll do everything at home, so this simple device is the new iPhone in healthcare. Holmes managed to convince the wealthiest businessmen in America, including well-known figures, to pay her millions of dollars. The sixth rule: hire a legion of lawyers to stop negative comments. From the beginning, Holmes relied on complete secrecy so that no one would know anything about her project. For this reason, she pursued very hard policies, imposing huge fines on anyone who divulged a secret from her company, whether from employees or even visitors. She hired one of the most famous lawyers in America. The result was that whenever someone tried to utter a word about her project, the legal team of lawyers nagged him for several months until he fell silent. Indeed, Holmes brought 3 of her employees into court. Things continued in the same state of complete secrecy until the appearance of John Carrero, a journalist for the Wall Street Journal. Carrero suspected the matter and began to raise questions. In the medical community, creating such a device could take decades, not several months, in the basement of a house. In Silicon Valley, entrepreneur may mostly rely on fake-it-until-you-make-it method. Before beginning to work on the idea, he first secures funding. But in the field of medical devices, there must be dozens of complex reports and scientific papers published in prestigious journals. It's not like coding a game. This technique seemed impossible to experts, because drawing blood through a finger seems to have a lower quality than drawing it directly from a vein. This is because blood analyses differ from each other, because some tests damage the sample or change its nature. This is due to the fact that blood analyses vary from one another, and that some tests may harm or alter the nature of the sample. Carrero published more than 40 studies on this subject, and gradually persuaded the U.S. government to look into Holmes' project by working with a group of interested parties. Finally, her fraud was proved. Holmes is now accused of fraud. Her business was forced to shut down all of its testing facilities and laboratories and stop working forever, while Holmes faces a 20-year prison sentence for using rotten devices to endanger the health of thousands of people. Elizabeth serves as a symbol for everything superficial in today's society. She presented false and unreliable information in lovely, elaborate language. She portrayed herself as a successful role model, with her inspirational sentences rather than her accomplishments. Her news spread like wildfire. Press releases portrayed her as the next Steve Jobs. People have believed her for more than 10 years. Everyone fell under her influence. And not many tried to ask what the most important thing in that story. What is the Holmes device she was talking about? Did she imagine the scale of the disaster? This can only happen in a world that is inherently false, that sanctifies appearances above anything else. And this in turn invites us to a lot of contemplation. And with that, goodbye till I return with more insightful criminal narratives. For more videos, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to never miss any updates.